You've all seen warm-up number 1, so I'm going to explain the gist of it quickly. All of the muscles have a job to do, and all of the muscles ideally do their own jobs. When they don't, other muscles do their jobs for them. That's called compensation. And that keeps us going, but we don't want that because that's unsustainable. And the reason is that all muscles are not created equal. Some are bigger and stronger than others, and if you have larger muscles out of the game, like your glutes for instance, you're going to have smaller ones, like those in the lower back, compensating for jobs they can't do. This warm-up is for temporarily improving load distribution. Mobility is like stretching for joints. When you create more movement at a joint, the muscles responsible for movement at that joint do more work. That can get us through the workout. Here we're doing 3 hip mobility movements, 3 T-spine, 1 full body, and 1 ankle mobility movement. And what those are doing is temporarily making sure your glutes are doing a lot of work, your T-spine or mid-back is doing a lot of work, and your lower back is doing less work. And that's what most people need. Attaining proper load distribution is important because it's your last defense against compensation. Moving on. Today, I want to talk to you about a more important issue for the time being, and that is how the pictures lie. A lot of people, myself included when I first started lifting weights, want to be a bodybuilder. And I'm here to tell you that there's more to it than you think. First and foremost, the pictures lie. Bodybuilders are much bigger in person than they look like. I got into an argument the other day on social media about this. It was about which era of bodybuilders were the most appealing to the general public. And of course, Arnold and the Golden Era guys came up. I had to butt in though and say that Arnold was actually much bigger than what is appealing to the general public. Lots of people don't know how big 240 competition-ready pounds really are until they're standing next to them. To be actually appealing looking to the average person, you're going to have to go further back than Arnold. Rather, you're going to have to go back to Steve Reeves's, Bill Pearl's, and Chuck Sipes' generation. Last, I want to make one thing really clear. To be anywhere near the size of today's bodybuilders, or the golden era bodybuilders even, if you want to look good, then really consider your height. The only bodybuilders I've seen in person that really looked good weren't even just in the 6-foot category. They were more like in the 6'4" category. I know that sounds weird, but even if you scale it way back to, for instance, 18-inch competition-ready arms, if you put those on a 5'7" guy, that will be pretty darn unappealing to just about anybody in the general public. Why? Because the pictures lie. Go to a competition, see for yourself, and make your own decision. But that was actually the biggest deterrent for me when I first started bodybuilding and went to competitions. I knew I didn't want to look like that, and that was, of course, also pushing the limits of what even my teenage imagination would allow me to believe was possible for me. The pictures lied, and that deflated me. Point number 2, drug use is rampant. Those of us that have been in the game long enough know that basically all of your heroes, so to say, use PEDs or performance-enhancing drugs. For the most part, people haven't been competitive on any bodybuilding stage that is not designated as natural since the 1980s without using a lot of performance-enhancing drugs. I know every now and then a freak will come along, we've all met them, that will take their physiques extremely far without PEDs, but I hope that none of you think that there are actually athletes on the Olympia stage, for instance, classic or not, whom are not using drugs. And that's just outside of my comfort zone. The only thing I really want to say about this is that there are a lot of realities in between dead and alive that are also unpleasant. Lots of people think of PEDs as being pretty safe because on the larger scale, they don't kill that many users per year. But that's ignoring a great number of other unpleasant things that can and do happen while you're still alive just to achieve a physique that, to be perfectly honest, doesn't really look that good in person. So today, in this video, I'm going to try and introduce you to a new idea. Be a better version of the athlete you already are. Your body is actually already an athlete, regardless of what it looks like. I've trained my share of very overweight, so-called unathletic people, and I used the same terminology to describe them. Your body is an athlete. You might not be, but your body is. It responds quickly. My suggestion to you is just to make it better. Make it bigger, stronger, faster, more flexible. That will buy you a lot more of what you're looking for than sheer size alone. And we're gonna start with reverse crunches. A lot of competitive bodybuilders are relying on dieting to give them the illusion of having abs, and I hate that. The ones that actually train them have little bricks in there that look so much better than undeveloped, lean abs. In addition to that, development in the rectus abdominis, the visible ab musculature, is necessary to stave off lower cross syndrome. This is an exercise that has become very popular amongst soccer players because it's been shown to reduce knee injuries in females by a significant amount. It's called the Copenhagen plank, and it was invented by former Swedish people called Danish people. Adductors or inner thighs are often forgotten about in people's programs, and they are an essential part of hitting squat depth. In fact, I'm tempted to say no adductor strength, no squat depth. Just for your information, dramatic improvements in anything is a good sign that something has been ignored nearly entirely and is now being strengthened. You want to look for those opportunities because they function like a kind of cheat code. Train something that you've been ignoring entirely and enjoy major growth. Notice I'm not just raising my lower leg up and down here, I'm lowering my entire body down and raising it up until my feet touch one another. And this is a very difficult exercise. I sustained a hamstring injury during AIT, so I kind of reverse engineered this exercise to fill a hole in my programming in regards to hip extension. If I do say so myself, this is one of my better inventions. Point your toe to keep the band on your foot and do high reps. Kettlebell swing is a power movement made popular by the Russians a long time ago. It's fantastic for everything athletic because you're improving on your rate of force production in your glutes, which are your largest and most necessary muscles in the majority of sports. When you do this, you want to pop your knees back and your hips should move forward as a result of that. At the kettlebell's highest position, you should be standing upright and it should be pulling on you. This is an exercise I like. Today I want to show you that it is more of a sport than you might think though. It's an exercise as well, training primarily the core, not shoulder stability like some people claim, even done with a bottom down kettlebell, but rather this is a sport to be won. Because the load is distributed over so many body parts, the amount of fatigue accumulated over time is less than the degree to which you can improve from rep to rep by making modifications to whatever you're doing, and that makes it a sport. There are tactics involved. This is 40 kg. I'm trying to hit it for 2, and you'll notice I miss it on one of the arms 2 times in a row. Then I think about what I'm doing, I make a couple of adjustments, and I'm able to get it on the 3rd set. And that's somewhat uncommon to strength sports, because typically the amount of fatigue accumulated over time will surpass your ability to get better from rep to rep. Not so during this exercise. So here I'm adjusting my watch because I noticed it was a little bit tight and restricting blood flow. I'm doing 1 RMs on the DB snatch here. I'm not that great at them, but I wanted to get a number, so here I am. 95 pounds for one today. In regards to Olympic exercises, I often prefer the single arm versions over the barbell versions. Usually they're a more sustainable option in that they allow your body to travel the path of least resistance. Moving on to the trap bar deadlift. I start off with T-spine rotations in quadruped position, which mobilize the spine through rotation. And then I move on to the downward dog variation, which stabilizes the core and further mobilizes the T-spine, this time in extension rather than rotation. Mobility in extension and rotation at the same time are two good prerequisites for the deadlift itself. That means that the T-spine will do more work than usual and the core will be slightly more stable from residual stiffness left over from the downward dog variation, and your deadlift will be better. I needed 9 reps here to improve from last week, so 9 is what I got. Now we're moving straight into front squats with no break to fill in the range of motion gap that trap bar deadlifts leave. I like to fill in those holes, and I know they're there simply by way of knowing which exercises I've done and their ranges of motion. In case you didn't know, visible development is not likely enough to determine weaknesses or imbalances in your physique. You can't just build glutes, quads, and hamstrings in any which way. You have to make sure your programming is balanced. That's when theory plays a greater role than visible results. Here we're moving on to the rotational chest pass. Chest is a hard muscle group to train, at least for me, because I am almost always dealing with shoulder pain. In fact, I don't really have it figured out yet. I've taken several shoulder and arm care related courses from some of the best guys in the business, and I'm still not that great. So a lot of my training boils down to good exercise selection rather than quote unquote loving my exercises like I do with my lower body training, which you've all seen if you've been watching this channel. One of the challenging things with shoulder is that the scap has 17 muscle attachments. That means any number of things can be causing your shoulder pain. There are a list of usual suspects, but at this stage of the game, that list is somewhat exhausted for me, and I need a more integrated approach. Finally, we're going to finish off with some arms, because if you don't have a personality like me, this is going to be your primary means of getting a woman. Supination is a severely underappreciated function of the biceps, so do these alternate dumbbell curls and watch growth happen.